the United States, especially since World War II, has been saying, in order to take care of my interests as Americans, we need the world not to be a threat for the United States of America, not to be a military threat, that's for sure, not to be an economic threat, that's for sure, not to be a political threat. And again, that has been the core of American policy since America won World War II.
Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for tuning in to the Baca Project. Now, as you've seen in my previous videos, we have dove in deeper into scripture and understanding what the Bible has to say about given subjects. Now, in my previous video I did with Jeff Morgan, we talked about Israel. We didn't talk about the politics. We didn't talk about really the war and what this means for the world. We didn't talk about what this means for Christians or even us here in America. So I wanted to bring on my stepfather-in-law, I guess, and talk about it. This is what he talks about on his YouTube channel, The Balagan Connection. And we're going to dive into what this war really means, the implications of it, and all the different things surrounding it. So, but no further ado, hi, David. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. And thanks for putting this together. This looks like we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be fun. We're gonna get into some pretty cool conversation, but we're also gonna try to lighten things up as well too. So I think it's gonna be really good.
All right.
So let's just jump right into it. I mean, we're in a war. I know there's a 2-week ceasefire going on right now, which is great. But how do you see that working out? I mean, right now Israel's trying to get rid of Hezbollah. And there's strikes in Iran, as far as I hear, at least what I'm seeing on the news. Iran's claiming the violations of the ceasefire tied to the Strait of Hormuz. What's going on here? What does this all mean?
So I think the core issue is that Iran has been a center of instability and jihadi Muslim fanaticism in the Middle East, spreading its wings to the rest of the world for a long time. And I think the United States of America has decided, and I think we'll probably go into all the reasons for this, that that kind of evil needs to be put under some control. The main issue that Iran, or the main threat that Iran is basically with them attaining nuclear weapons, they have a capability to push policy in the Middle East and in extension to the rest of the world in their direction, which is a fundamentalist, anti-West, anti-United States, anti-Israel dynamic. And I think the United States of America with President Trump, by the way, all the presidents of the United States have said that we need to deal with this. None of them actually did. President Trump decided to use the situation in the Middle East and the I'm going to say the closeness or the cooperation with Israel, who played a role in this, and to take on the Iranian regime and disarm them from nuclear weapons. And from there, it's extended, I think, for a month and a half with American strikes on Iranian military assets, American strikes and Israeli strikes on Iranian leadership. In the meantime, Iran has been firing at anything that moves in the Middle East, everywhere from Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and definitely Israel. And it pushed the button on all its proxies to attack everybody that they could. This war has been fought to, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, a stalemate right now, where the United States of America has agreed for, like you said, a 2-week ceasefire, where both sides, the United States and Iran, are going to sit down in Pakistan and try to find some kind of an agreement that will be acceptable to both sides. In the meantime, the Iranian proxy in Yemen has been quiet. The Iranian proxy in Gaza has been more or less dismantled, but the Iranian proxy in Lebanon is still firing rockets at Israel. Iran has tried to tie between the situation in Lebanon and this ceasefire with the United States. The United States of America said there's no connection between the two. So there is still an active shooting war going on between Israel, northern Israel, the northern part of Israel, and the Iranian Hezbollah supported, the Iranian proxy called the Hezbollah that is inside Lebanon. But even that's up for negotiation right now. So that was a
Got it.
that
Yeah.
was a long.
No, there's a lot. There's a lot going
long-
on. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, no doubt. Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this video today. I hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so we can continue growing this movement and growing this mission of help bringing depth and understanding to today's world, but most importantly, the Bible. Please smash that like button and hit the alert so that way you know when new videos come out. And if you want to support this channel, support this ministry, please do so at buymeacoffee.com/the Baca Project. All right, you guys, thanks. Let's jump right back into it. And you know, I loved, there was a video that that was put out by Trump, and there's a lot of stuff that Trump does that I kind of go, oh, this guy's a little extreme for me sometimes. And, you know, but this one was actually really funny. And it had a video, a short clip of President Bush, and they said something about Iran, and he goes, no. And then it was Obama, and he said no. And then it was Hillary Clinton, and she said no. And then it was Trump, and he's like, I'm going to bomb the out of them. And I just thought that was so funny. Like, I was like, this is Trump. This is what we voted for, you know, is this kind of this guy that's just not afraid. Yeah, gung-ho, but controlled and focused. You know, it's a very intense kind of guy.
Well, here's the classic, or I think the core of the issue right now, and maybe this is something we can get into a little bit later. When President Trump says America first, one, he doesn't mean America only, meaning America and American interest and the safety of the American people and the economy of the American people is his main concern. But because America is interacting with other players, both worldwide and both on the continent in the United States and the rest of the world, you can't completely separate yourself from the world. So the United States, especially since World War II, has been saying, in order to take care of my interests as Americans, we need the world not to be a threat for the United States of America, not to be a military threat, that's for sure, not to be an economic threat, that's for sure, not to be a political threat. And again, that has been the core of American policy since America won World War II, for lack of a better word. And so I think what President Trump is saying is that we've kind of let down our guard on issues of America first on all these different levels, the economic level. And remember, he's in economic struggles. I don't know if you remember, with the whole tariffs. He said, we need to put America first economically. On the diplomatic level, he said to the United Nations, if you don't line up with America first, then we're going to dismantle the United Nations. On the military level, he said to NATO, if America isn't first on the military level, we're going to dismantle NATO. And the last of the threats that he has before he deals with the main threat, and we're going to have to get into that, on the military level, is to put Iran, who actually started off by attacking America in 1979 when they overthrew one government and set up this government. And he says, I need to put them into a place where they will not be a threat. So I think America's America first policy, President Trump is the first one who really took that seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it gets a little convoluted, and we'll get into that a little bit too about the America first and what that really means. You know, but we'll get into that. But one of the things I think was so incredible that really shows Trump's ideals in America first was the rescuing of the pilot and his co-pilot. I'm forgetting his position, what it was called, but
was a weapon. I think
weapon specialist
would be weapons specialist officer or something like that.
A weapons officer, something like that. Yeah, but that rescue was incredible. And you were saying that in Iran, they're just shooting at everything that moves right now. And so for these two men to escape be safe, alive, and for Trump to be able to pull off that rescue under fire is pretty incredible. I mean, it shows the heart of his America First narrative and desire and intention, I think, really well. But, before we get into too much, I do think we need to talk about, let's break down a little bit of what America First is, because there's basically a couple different ways of looking at this. So some people will say America First, means that it's America only, isolationist. And those can get convoluted between two parties, essentially. You have your Nick Fuentes that says everyone else can basically go to hell, and America is the only thing that matters. Christ is king is what he usually says, right up there with Candace Owens, the psychopath. And then you have, people like Matt Walsh, who's a little bit more balanced, not so crazy, but his focus is, it looks a little bit more like isolationist, but his focus is to say, well, I'm worried about this immigration problem we have. We have 14 million immigrants, and the U.S. Senate right now is trying to pass a bill from the Republican side to give anonymity, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Anonymity. So trying to basically allow 14 million immigrants to have full citizenship without any kind of labor. And so, there's a lot of different stuff here. What do you say to those people that maybe are on the camp that seems a bit more rational? Like, obviously the Nick Fuentes, Candace, there's no talking logic to them. They're so full of deceit and hatred. You can't do anything. But the people like the Matt Walshes that are saying, why are we focused in the Middle East when we should be focused on here at home with the things that are going on with the immigration problems, the fraud problems? What's your thought on it? What do you think about that?
Okay, so in a nutshell, when you look at things from a geopolitical point of view, America, it has the best, I'm going to say, geographical situation of any major nation anywhere in the world. Think about the fact that America, on one hand, has access to both oceans on the east and on the west. On the other hand, has a very benign and peaceful neighbor on the north, has a little bit of a complex situation on the south. By the way, did you see the Democratic Party in Canada going crazy this week?
No.
I mean, I highly recommend if you want something that looks like an SNL.
Yeah,
it's where woke victimhood.
Yeah. I heard something about that. Yeah, where they had to get their cards.
Yeah.
Canada
has
all of Canada is an SNL skit. Just be real.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is what that does is allows the United States of America all of the resources that America has. I don't know if you know, but America is totally oil independent.
Yep.
We can actually sell oil to the rest of the world.
Yep.
On one hand, allows access to both sides of the world. On the other hand, has these great massive oceans between potential enemies on each side. During World War I and World War II, it was Germany, and you had the Atlantic on this side. World War II had Japan, and you had the Pacific on this side. And Israel, and America's main adversary today is China, and we have a Pacific Ocean between us and China, which is why America can allow itself to decide how it wants to defend its interests and not be, in the control of players that are either friendly or non-friendly. The Chinese are not a friendly player, but again, we have a Pacific Ocean. So what I'm trying to say is this. America has a very unique position in the world geography. I believe on the world stage, even politically, and I'm even going to go into spiritually, if you want to go into that. But the enemies of the United States of America, okay, the ones on one side are the Chinese, and the ones on the other side are the fundamental Muslims, and the ones in the middle are the, the going woke Europeans who are becoming Muslims. They will not stay on the other side of the ocean if they have a choice, if they have a chance. So America's policy has always been, let's take care of our potential threats on that side of the ocean before they come over to our side of the ocean. And that is a great asset that the United States has always had.
Mm.
And there's always been a contrast between the isolationists say, we have these great oceans on both sides, we can stay here and just not deal with anything, or we need to be able to deal with potential threats before they come over to this side. I'm going to say there is a biblical element to this too. And again, think about Israel in its geography, or the Holy Land, or Judea, whatever you want to call. We've always been at the center and have had pressure coming at us from the south. That would be the Egyptian side, or from the north. Remember Babylon, Assyria, and everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, we've always been under, how do you say, the pressure of the different elements actually deciding. King David went out and conquered way to the north peoples that were not Jewish in order to create that buffer between us and our threats from the north. The Bible said the threat always comes from the north. So what I'm trying to say is that by definition, America has decided to push its enemies away and to deal with problems as far away as possible. That is why we have the greatest and most powerful Navy in the world, bar none. I mean, the United States of America's Navy, with the exemption of the Chinese, is more than all the rest of the navies put together.
Wow.
And that's always been a major part of our policy.
Yeah, we really do have an incredible military, one I'm very proud of and very thankful for every member that has served for my freedom, my liberty, and I try to thank everyone I can for it. One of the things that when you brought up Japan, it made me think of I don't know if you saw it when they were sitting in the Oval Office, and the Japanese said, "Why didn't you let us know before you attacked?" And he goes, "Well, I want it to be a surprise." He goes, you guys, the Japanese, you guys know about surprises. You guys didn't tell us about Pearl Harbor." So he's just his wit is so good, and it's so quick and sharp. So I guess your idea of this situation, if you can speculate, would be that America is building a buffer zone in order to deal with our problems. So that way, while we're focusing on our problems inward, we're not being attacked from the outward. Is that your thoughts on it?
Yes, and again, history has proven again and again that is a critical aspect. We talked about Japan. The story of Pearl Harbor is a classic example of what happens if America doesn't deal with the threats when they're far away. They will come close.
Got it.
And Pearl Harbor was an attack on American soil, not on the continental USA, but on American assets in the Pacific. The Japanese could have sat. I mean, a lot of people in America didn't want to get into the struggle with the Japanese empire in the Pacific.
Yep.
They will stay on their side. We will stay on our side. And we know biblically, morally, and politically, and militarily, whatever you want to go, however you want, okay, that evil does not stay on the other side. Evil will come to bite you and grab you any chance in any place it can. The Iranian regime is evil. I'm not going to say that the Chinese regime is evil, but their aspirations to become a world dominant power is actually an adversary on the political, economic, and military level for the United States of America. What America did with Iran was take out a proxy of China in preparation for the war that we're going to have to fight with China somewhere down the road. And I don't know if you know, but there's a Cold War already going on between us and China.
Wow.
Connected to the Japanese and connected to other things, but yes. So what I'm trying to say is the doctrine of we need to take care of our threats as far away as possible and as soon as possible before they become a major issue. President Trump said clearly, if I had been the president during the time where North Korea was building nuclear weapons, they would not have had a nuclear weapon. He totally believes that the fact that North Korea can threaten American assets and American ideals and American economic ties in the Asian theater is because America dropped the ball on making sure that North Korea, which is an anti American regime, will get the capability to put that threat in place. And
Oh,
as a result of that, South Korea, which is an American ally, by the way,
yep,
is much less safer than it would have been if North Korea did not have that kind of capability.
yep, yep. That's incredible. So I mean, what role, I mean, would you say? Because a lot of people think that this was a war between Israel and Iran, and it was in a way, because of the proxies attacking Israel over and over, and the U.S. Did step in. And again, I'm not extremely political, and I don't follow all this as much as you do. But what would you say the role of the U.S. that they had played in mediating or supporting Israel during this escalation, and how might the ceasefire affect the long-term American interests in the Middle East, including energy, security, alliances with other Gulf states?
There's how do you say there's the immediate dynamic and there is the long-term dynamic, and one of the things that we keep on saying about President Trump that he plays 3D chess in this connection. The immediate is an anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Christian regime sitting on one of the most strategic areas for as far as energy is concerned, okay, that have been publicly anti everything that America stands for, and was putting together the capability to be able to threaten the United States and to make the United States, how do you say, bow down to its policies and in its dynamics. And what we've seen in this war, their ability to close off the Strait of Hormuz, means that they did have that capability. They still have that capability. I think President Trump realized that this is a danger. And so that's the immediate. Add on to the fact, this is before I even talk, even before I say Israel, add on to the fact that the United States of America sees Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states as important partners of the United States in everything that has to do with energy. And in a side note, President Trump has said again and again and again, and I would probably agree, and you would probably agree, that the whole green energy dynamic, where we would find alternatives to petrochemical energy sources, has blown up in our faces.
Silly.
I mean, you drive by, you drive by all those windmills on the way to Palm Springs, and you get the idea. So I think the United States of America realizes that from American point of view, they have to have some kind of control over one of the main hubs of petrochemical energy. That's why he connected to Saudi Arabia so strongly. That's why he connected to all the Gulf states, because he realizes that we are not at an alternative energy kind of situation.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is the Middle East. And then Iran sits there and says, oh, we want to have the power that comes with that. America says, we don't want you to have the power that comes from that. Yeah. And I think, that is the struggle that we're going on right now.
Yeah,
but I mean, President Trump is pretty good at playing this chess, because this war is not only with Iran, this war is with China and Russia also.
Yeah, because I mean, Iran's oil, I think they produce like 30-40% of all of China's oil. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So, I mean, they're taking a huge hit right now.
Well, they're not, because Iran is allowing Chinese oil to move through the straits, but not allowing everyone else. So you understand that Iran is actually backing up against the United States and says, we do what we want. And the main thing is, somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference between the Suez Canal, which actually is under control of Egypt, and Egypt is allowed to demand money. I don't know I think it's something like everywhere between $500,000 to $2 million per ship that goes through the Suez Canal. Wow. Why can't Iran say we want to control what's happening on the Strait of Hormuz? Main difference is the Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway.
Got it.
It is not controlled. So everybody who decides it wants to control international water, then we've gone going down a slippery slope where every little local power can threaten shipping in offshore on its area, and we have a problem. Now, I need to add that the United States of America has been the peacekeeper of the world in the last 70 years. Ever since World War II, the United States has been keeping, mostly the United States has been keeping the waterways of the world open. And I just now saw something about Britain has only 2 destroyers and a little bitty aircraft carrier. And this is the great British Empire that controlled the seas. So America is saying, and President Trump is saying, we have assets, we have things that are important to us, and we will look out for them as far as possible. And remember, I haven't even mentioned Israel. And that is the situation. If he manages to take control of the Strait of Hormuz, he has his hand on the tap of the oil that goes to China. Add on what happened in Venezuela, which was the other supplier of oil for China. And this has been a stroke of genius in the oncoming battle with China that the United States is on the way to.
Wow. Okay. So I can see that being the case. That's pretty interesting. I guess I never put those, 2 and 2 together on that one. And Iran being, not the largest country right there, but they're pretty large. But you have all these other countries. You have Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and other countries like that. But you see, Iran has so much money, and they've used that money to empower and financially back groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, and if I'm not mistaken, even what's the one from the Desert Storm, the Al Qaeda, right?
The Iraqis, yeah. Well, there are Shia militias in Iraq also,
but they were funded by Iran, right?
They were funded by Iran.
Yeah.
They're still being funded by Iran. By the way, they killed 4 American servicemen in this war. 4 of the American servicemen that were lost in this war were taken out by them.
Well, in your view, has the recent conflict weakened or strengthened this access of resistance, this power group that they've been funding? Does this weaken them? Because I was talking with our friend Jeff in Israel, and obviously you have a lot of friends and family out there, and I have seen that there has been a huge decrease by talking with him and watching the news, as I'm sure you've seen. But do you think that this has genuinely weakened them? Is that your perspective on it?
So, in order to answer that question, we need to go back to the 6th of October, 2023, where Iran was in its full power, was pushing towards a nuclear weapon, and nobody could kind of get any control under that. Hezbollah had something like 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel. Iran had something like 150,000 rockets aimed at the different Gulf states. Hamas was in full power with that networks of tunnels underground. ISIS was growing in the Sinai Peninsula. So there was this getting ready for a major confrontation between the Shiite minority of the Muslim world. Now, we need to understand that the Muslim world had more or less given up in its struggle against the West. Go back to the 1940s and the 1950s, where there's pan-Arabism saying we can take on the West. Go into the 1970s and the 1980s, where Palestinian terrorists were blowing up planes all over the world, and the intifadas in Israel. More or less everybody in the Muslim world had said, we cannot take on the West, we cannot take on Israel. The last fighting element was the Shiite Muslims, who see the West as an abomination on a spiritual level and not only on a political level. Their fight against the West is a fight against Christian values, is a fight against Western values. And it's not by chance that they chant in their parliament, death to the U.S., death to America, and death to Israel. I mean, the West is the only thing that they believe is holding them back from Muslim world domination that they believe is their right as the true believers in Allah.
Yep.
And that's what they believe. So they're fighting a spiritual war. We haven't been fighting a spiritual war until now. Though I will say this, you would probably agree with me that God is using President Trump, God is using Israel, God is using other assets in the Middle East to actually counterbalance this evil influence that has taken role. So to go back to your question, yes, we are in a much better position than we were on the 6th of October 2023 because we didn't know the danger. Now we know the danger. And most of the threats have been taken out. The Hamas as a threat is not completely disappeared, but much weaker. Hezbollah in Lebanon is much weaker. And Iran is tatters of what it used to be or what it was only a year and a half ago. And again, we need to thank President Trump for that. So whether this war ends tomorrow or not, the Iranian regime is much weaker than it was, is much less of a threat. And yes, America is safer today than it was 3 years ago.
Wow. So you are seeing that there's been a massive weakening of the resistance of this group of what's it called, the proxies from Iran. But looking at like the humanitarian and the economic fallout, obviously there are going to be displacements of people. Lebanon specifically too is going to have to see that, and the people of Iran as well. There's going to be disruptions and shipping and obviously economics all over the world globally. Obviously there's casualties. We're seeing there's casualties in Iran. Obviously America and Israel are doing the most, if you can call, righteous way of going about it. Saying, hey, we're gonna be attacked, blowing up this bridge, make sure you're not there, kind of thing. And I see that happening, and I think people that are honest, logically honest, can see that. But there are casualties for on all sides, really. What would you say, from a geopolitical standpoint, are the best diplomatic steps, most urgent to prevent a wider regional war? Is that something that's even avoidable at this point?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't see a wider regional war actually taking place. I mean, Saudi Arabia isn't going to start a war with anybody. In the situation that we see, I don't see a wider regional war. I mean, there are a couple of players that we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about Turkey. We haven't talked about Egypt, who were part of the players. But I think everybody has settled down. Everybody has actually lined up to the American dominance of the economic and the military situation. The only one that is standing up and pushing against American control is Iran, which I think to a certain extent, and by the way, in China. But we'll get to that if you want to get into that.
Not too much.
But what America is doing right now is actually showing that we are the dominant force in the Middle East. I don't see anybody else going into a regional war. And again, maybe here's something else that we need to talk about, is that the ones who start playing out, the Tucker Carlsons, this is going to be a regional war. I mean, they have a interest. They have a direction that they're going to push. And the direction that they're going to push is isolationist America. Let's stay out of other people's issues. And basically they're saying we need to, like we said, come back in, put a border, put a wall on our border, and keep the enemy out on our wall. And again, that's the way they see it. I have no problem. But war is not nice. War is not, and again, be it wars in the Bible, be it wars in history or wars today. And when a government decides to take its economy and take its people and push into a certain direction and to come up head to head against the United States of America, and then say, wait a minute, this is the classical bully tactic. Okay, either you back down or I'm going to attack you. And then when you say, I'm not going to back down, And when you push back against the bully, he goes into victimhood mode and says, "Oh, I'm a victim of your aggression."
Yeah.
And America is saying, if you didn't push at us, if you didn't attack us, nobody would have been aggressive against you. But when you are aggressive against you, and the classic example of that was Chuck Norris, may he rest in peace. Okay. He says, we will be peaceful until you are unpeaceful. And when you become unpeaceful, we know how to become unpeaceful better than you know how. And that's what President Trump is actually conveying to the world. Now, he's not only conveying it to Iran, he's conveying it to Russia, and he's conveying it to China, saying if you push up against the United States of America and we come at you, you need to be careful. Now, this is the Middle East. This is world politics. The fact that he's taken on Iran, I believe, and again, I'm not a specialist, but it seems right, knowing how people live in the Middle East or in this kind of agenda. The fact that he is pounding Iran into submission, hopefully, we'll see what happens at the end, means that he might not have to do it with China. And in the long term, China said very clearly, we're on our way to a struggle with China. I don't know if you know what they're doing in the South China Sea. They're trying to control all of the shipping out of the southern part of China. And if you think the horns of the Strait of Hormuz is a bottleneck, the South China Sea is what China is trying to push against. The whole story with Taiwan, which actually manufactures 90% of the semiconductors in the world, and they're threatening that. We're on the way to a struggle with them. And what President Trump is saying, look what I did to Iran. You don't want me to do this to you.
Yeah, and I can see that. That's kind of the way Trump works. He's always worked like that, is he will use something as an example to speak to many different people and let them know that he can do it. I love what he said about Putin. It was years ago in his first term. And they said, Putin says he has a big red button on his desk. And he goes, I have a big red button. Mine's bigger and I can press it harder. And, it's just kind of like, kind of a slight little funny joke, but like he means it. He's like, no, if you think you can do something, I'll do it better. I'll do it stronger. I'll do it. I'll do it much, much more scary. So that's kind of always been his MO. And I do appreciate that about him. That's how you do have to talk to these people, because these people only respond to power. So
this last example is amazing. Everybody's upset with him when he went and said, I'm going to wipe out the civilization. And again, this is President Trump. President Trump says, you want to say death to America? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to wipe out your civilization.
Yeah.
And they took him seriously enough to walk into the negotiation table.
Wow. I mean, let's talk about that just for a second. Then I want to switch gears. Honestly, how do you see that turning out? I mean, as far as anyone knows, the Ayatollah is a cardboard pizza box. How does that really pan out? How does that really work out for this moving forward? Do you actually see negotiations being prevalent? I mean, these are extremist. The Iranian regime they're extremist people, and they have no regard for their own people. I mean, do you actually see this panning out for anything positive?
Well, I think it's a stall tactic on their part.
Okay.
I mean, they're trying to stall and get some more time. I just now went over the 11 points that they actually sent to President Trump. The Pakistani prime minister sent to President Trump.
Okay.
And none of those points have anything to do with the 15 points that President Trump gave them to say this is what we need for this war to end. So the difference is very, very great. I don't see some kind of overlap between them. And again, all of this, I'm talking American interests and American sources. I mean, Israel nobody asked us if we should stop this war or not. I mean, that's the whole idea. But basically, I don't see some kind of meshing of interest in this one. And I don't think there's going to be any choice. There might be some interim kind of ceasefire and we can kind of talk about it. But I don't believe that anything drastic is going to change unless the regime is overthrown by its own people.
Got it.
And President Trump is saying we're not going to overthrow them. And the question is, are the Iranian people going to rise up and overthrow the regime.
Are they able?
By the
Yeah.
way, there's a prophetic and spiritual, if you want to go into that, there's this prophetic aspect that's playing out right now, but that's a whole
No,
different
actually,
channel.
that's the chapter I wanted, the gear I wanted to switch to. You know, when you're looking at Ezekiel, Zechariah, Daniel, you know, as the circles that we're in, right? You know, the people that we talk with, a lot of them are hyper prophetic people. You know, you got Tom Hughes, the prophecy guy, and Lee Brainerd and Brandon Holdhouse, and all these people. They're always talking about prophecy, and it has its merit, it has its place, and it's a beautiful thing. Not really what this channel is focused on. I also know that's not really what your channel is focused on, but you know, you do have some knowledge on these books and these things. Do you see any kind of end time scenarios or anything that's talked about in these books linked to what's going on today? Do you see any parallels?
Okay, definitely, and probably one of the main, I'm going to say, indicators of end times is that Israel will sit in peace and will be sucker punched by the armies that come from the north. I mean, that is the classical interpretation of Ezekiel 38. And I'm looking at the world today, as far as I know it, both the Middle East and the wider world, and I don't see Israel sitting in peace and harmony without no walls. It says, okay, around it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to use the modern term of walls, that means Arrow 1, Arrow 2, Iron Dome, and David Sling, and whatever's going to. I don't see Israel giving that up to create a scenario for Ezekiel 38 unless Iran changes completely and becomes a non-threat to Israel. And if Iran is a non-threat, Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf states will line up. Turkey, who is a main adversary, economic adversary for Israel in the Middle East, excuse me, might decide to get on the bandwagon here, because we're talking about economic corridors that go from China and India to Europe that are going to go through Saudi Arabia and through Israel. So Turkey might decide to get onto that. That's the only kind of scenario that I see that would lead up to Israel living in peace and harmony and quiet enough to allow something like Ezekiel 38 to take place.
Got it.
So as long as Iran is the regime that it is, and it is a threat, I don't see that happening. If Iran becomes a pro-West ally of Israel, that will allow Israel to put its guard down. And again, we've shown that we know how to do that. We've done that a couple of times in the modern period. Yeah. We've done that in the past. But yes, that's the only way I could tie it together.
So your thoughts are that not only would Iran have to be a non-threat, it would have to be an ally.
It would have to be
an ally.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes sense. So I guess, as many people are always wanting to know, it's hysteria for most people. If that happened, let's say it happened today, and it's just speculation, just conjecture. I understand that. But if it happened today, if Iran said, Am Israel Chai, they said all the people of Israel live, and they just became pro-Israel. They flew an Israeli flag and celebrated Shabbat. I mean, they went so pro-Israel that you wouldn't even believe it. I mean, how long genuinely do you think that Israel would say, you know what, we're gonna shut the switch off of David Sling and Arrow and Iron Dome and all that? I mean, what, honestly?
Let's play the thought game, okay?
Yeah. Total conjecture at this point, people.
The Iranian people overthrow the government, and they go back to being what they were before the mullahs took over in 1979. So they were a moderate Muslim nation, similar to Turkey, similar to let's say Malaysia, okay, something like that. By the way, quick reminder: Iran is not Arab.
Yeah, it's Persian.
Yes, no, there's biblical ramifications because the Arab nations are the sons of Ishmael. There is a I'm not going to say a curse, but there is a definition of the Bible who the descendants of Ishmael are. And they are not getting along with Israel. They're not going to get along with the descendants of Abraham, the other descendants of Abraham. But remember, Iran is not Arabian, is not a descendant of Ishmael. It is a separate entity. They're Muslim. So we had very good relationship with Iran before the overthrow of the government. Again, a whole different story. So Iran becomes a westernized, pro-West, pro-Israel kind of nation. Iranian resources and Israeli technology could create I'm going to say a golden age in the Middle East.
Okay.
Think about Saudi. That's what this Saudi arrangement was. Think about Israeli technological know-how. I mean, high tech, AI, computers, everything that. Add that on to the resources that the Arabs have, and everybody's doing this for their own interest. Okay, would create a golden age in the Middle East, and the Middle East would be so interconnected. Okay, let's remember Israel's the size of New Jersey, and we're at one of the most strategic places in the world. The Middle East would be so interconnected. The feeling would be that the economic ties and the interconnection and we'd be eating hummus in Damascus and shawarma in Cairo, okay, would be so great that there would not be a feeling of threat. But that would take, I believe, at least 1 or 2 generations.
Got it. Okay. So, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I would anticipate it would take a bit of time. Not, I think some people, they see this and again, the hysteria sets in, they're going, oh my gosh, oh wow, there's going to be peace in the Middle East, and oh, this is when the Antichrist comes, and this is going to happen in 5 years from now. And it's like, I mean, do you honestly see that logically? I don't see it logically, but yeah, 1 or 2 generations, that could be. It could be sooner, it could be later. Who's to say? Well, I always tell people on my channel, I'm just like, when it comes to prophecy, it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm not going to speculate too much on that. But on this, I think this is very applicable to what's going on today. And what's the speculation of how long it would take for that to even be a possibility? And I think that's pretty fair.
I think an illustration. Sorry.
Go ahead.
A good illustration of that is that think how far away we are from Nazi Germany and everything that happened in World War II. And I don't think there would be any problem look how close the United States of America is. Look how close the European, and think about the European Union, okay, is a confederation of former World War II enemies. I mean, France, England were on one side and Germany was on the other side. And look how close they are together today. Yeah. And what are we talking? 2 generations? Actually, it was 1 generation or 1.5 generations. And the whole situation is completely different. I mean, how far away are we?
About 3 generations.
45.
Yeah, about 3 generations.
Yeah, but the European Union is half a generation ago. I mean, the European Union came when I was, I don't know if a child, but I was in my early 20s. I mean, again, so we're talking about that kind of time. But if that can happen between England and Germany, okay, or Germany and let's say France, then I think it could happen anywhere.
That's fair. Okay, well, let's jump into the next part. This is a question that you have been asked 1,000 times, and I know you've had a lot of thought on it. I'm Jewish, as you know. I'm a new Jew, though. I didn't get, I wasn't raised celebrating Shabbat and Pesach, and all these things are becoming more. It's part of my heritage, but it's still new to me in so many ways, as I'm becoming aware of my people's history. But from your perspective, being that you grew up Messianic Jewish, you're Jewish from Israel. There's so much there, so much richness there. But you have a unique perspective on saying something like this. How do you think one should view the Jewish people's connection to the land of Israel today, especially in relations to the covenants with Abraham, the exile, the return, and then also going into some of the New Testament teachings like Romans 11? about God's plan, Israel's placement, and the Jewish people in Israel. So what's your take on that?
Oh, well, okay. At the core, at the basis of what I am, and I'm probably going to be speaking about this on Sunday, is that God doesn't change. God doesn't change his character. God doesn't change his being, and God doesn't change his promises. And the way I read the Old Testament, those promises are very, very clear, and they're unconditional.
Irrevocable.
Irrevocable. I mean, yeah, but unconditional means we don't have to be something or to do something for God to keep his promises with us. When he actually made the covenant with Abraham, he put Abraham to sleep. When God walked through those sacrifices that indicate that God is making a covenant, Abraham did not walk with him. Abraham was asleep because God said, I am doing this on my own. So I see it as this way, and I see it as irrevocable. That doesn't mean that we are a good people. That doesn't mean that we always do everything right. That doesn't mean that uh, us as a people, as a nation, or as a modern state are always godly. I mean, if there's anything you know about the Jewish people, we have not always been godly, and we have paid a terrible price for it. And it has come as who we are. So that's my core being. Now, I understand that there are people who say to themselves, wait a minute, so many promises to God, and we understand that salvation comes through Jesus. There has to be a connection between the two. Yes, there is a connection because Jesus came from the people that were promised, that were the promised people. But on the other hand, I want to make it very clear. We're not saved because we're Jewish. Salvation is still through God's only begotten Son, in whom he was well pleased. I don't plug into salvation because I'm Jewish.
Yep.
Okay, so on one hand, you have that. On the other hand, I think most of us would agree that God uses all of us, believers and non-believers, Christians and non-Christians, saved and unsaved, for his purpose. Mm-hmm. And when God says he has a special tool or a special purpose for a group of people, that is God's right to say that. And I think that is the core of what we're talking about. That doesn't mean we're always right. That doesn't mean we're always true. But we are still in what the Bible calls God chosen people, I guess would be the definition of that.
I think that's
and that in my mind hasn't changed.
No, I agree. I think that's a great place. For those listening that heard what he just said, I think the most profound part of what he said was that God still uses Israel, the Jewish people, as a tool and as is something that he's promised to them to keep them together, to keep them in a specific land. But that doesn't mean salvation just because of genealogy. And so a lot of times when you talk to people in the replacement theology circles, if you listen to content online, most of them are going to say things like, let's look at Romans 9 and Galatians chapter 5. But I encourage you to look at Romans 11 and Galatians chapter 5. Now, if you want to read Romans 9 through 11, great. But Romans 11, the first part of Romans 11 says, has Israel stumbled lest they should fall, meaning fall away from God's covenants, God's grace? No, absolutely not. But then Galatians 5 says that there is no Jew or Gentile within Christ Jesus, but that means salvation. So again, just because you're born Jewish does not grant you salvation. It doesn't grant you a higher seat. That's why he says there's no woman, there's no male or female or bond or free, because there's no levels to this. We all come in the same gate through the same person, through his same teachings, through the same book, through the same faith that Abraham had. But it doesn't negate that while on this earth, there's still a value, there's still a purpose for the Jewish people in Israel. and that God is teaching lessons still from that holy mountain of Zion, God's classroom. And so that's something I want to encourage all of you. And I wanted to hit that point because it is so important that we all understand that God is still using the Jewish people to teach the world lessons, just like he always has through their rising and their falling. He's used it many times. And if you've noticed, whenever Israel rises or accomplishes something that's good, or evades an attack, wins a war, or even if they fail, there's so many times throughout the Old Testament that the enemy or the protagonist within that story, if you will, says that the God of Israel is God. And that's so important, is that you see these people that he uses Israel, and through using them pushes people that are not Jewish into belief in him as the God. Even when Jesus died on the cross, you look at the Roman centurion, and after Jesus died, which was obviously it was a fail from both Gentile and Jews, but you see him on the cross, and you read through the stories of Luke and Mark, and you see the Jewish people mocking him. At the end, Jesus dies, and the centurion looks at him and says, "Truly, this must be the Son of God." And so you see that even through Israel's rising or its falling, God will always use that to teach everyone around a lesson about his validity. So often we're focused on Israel's validity or America's validity, but really the only thing that matters is God's. And so that's what we have to do. And we have to let this plan, this thing that's going on, the situation that's happening in the Middle East and the world, look and see, how is God receiving glory from this? How can God receive glory from this? And then do what we can to accomplish that. So, but I want to get into the next question with you, David. I know we got to wrap up here pretty quick.
Can I just
yeah, go ahead.
add a quick one on this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You know my story.
Yes.
I know your story. And what happened to the Jewish people, I think, is an echo of what God does with all of us. I grew up a pastor's kid. I grew up in the Word. I walked away. But God never forgot and never disconnected from who I was. And when I received Christ as my Savior, I plugged into the promise that God made, that if I believe in Jesus and take him and as my Savior, I will get everlasting life. That promise was made in the Bible. And I look at that and I say, wait a minute, that gives me hope that what God promised is going to happen.
Yes.
I believe that the Jewish people are a echo, a poster, an indication, an example of the fact that we personally are broken and go wrong, but God still loves us. And God's people are broken and go astray, but God still loves them.
Yes.
And I think it's very easy to, if you see it in that way, everything makes so much more sense. And then add on to the fact that otherwise, how could you explain the Jewish people down through the ages? Mm-hmm. The only people who've returned to their land because the Bible said they would. The only people who spoke the language that the Bible was written in. The only people who have managed to stand up for so much animosity because God says they are the apple of my eye. I mean, otherwise, how do you explain it? And when people come and try to disconnect people and God, then they're trying to disconnect God and promise. And I think that's the main issue.
Yeah. And something that's really interesting for you that we'll have to talk about this personally, but I'll just throw it in the video for just a quick little segment. I was doing a little bit of deep diving with one of my distant relatives, and he, has immense research on the Baca family. And it's going to be in a video I'll be doing about why I called my channel the Baca Project. That'll be coming soon, you guys. But one of the things that was really cool was that, so the Sephardic Jews that came from Spain, he has paperwork tracing all of this, and they went into New Mexico. Now, they spoke a language that was very interesting. It was called Ladino. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but
definitely.
So they spoke Ladino. And what's very interesting about this is that the timeline of them creating the language of Ladino actually comes at least really close to the dating of when Hebrew actually started coming back into the world on a more regular basis. Because back then, the Jews in Europe were speaking Yiddish.
Which is a combination of Hebrew and German.
Yes.
Ladino is a combination of Hebrew and Spanish.
Yes, yes. So it's really interesting is that they still held on to this fraction. Because a lot of people say, oh, Hebrew was just dead. Well, it's like, well, no, there were still parts of it that were still very much alive. It wasn't that it was completely gone away. It was that it was mixed in with other languages that were local to where they were, which I found really fascinating. And there's actually a bunch of like Hebrew script written on the backside of mountains in New Mexico. Pretty interesting. But I'll have to get into that another day. That's a whole another video, maybe 3. But let's talk about a trigger word, David, and we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. I'd like you to give me your best definition and understanding. And is it important? Is it right? Is it good? Here we are, Christian Zionism. So what does this mean? Is it something that's a good thing? Let's break it down. What does this mean for you? Let's do that first.
Well, let's define what Zionism is, and
Yes.
let's make this clear. Zionism is the name of a place, and the Bible mentions Zion numerous times. The city of Zion, the hill of Zion. Okay, it becomes a generic term for the Holy Land or the Promised Land.
Okay, where is this place?
modern-
What is Zion? What's the hill of Zion?
Well, the hill of Zion is the western hill, actually sitting on Jerusalem. There's basically 3 hills in Jerusalem that most people would recognize. We all know about Mount Moriah, which is where the temple stood. To the east of Mount Moriah is the Mount of Olives. You've heard about that. Jesus came down, ascended from the Mount of Olives. To the west of Mount Moriah is Mount Zion, the western hill or Mount Zion. But that became a generic term for the whole city of Jerusalem, the city of Zion, and at some point became a term for the whole country. And the Bible, in a spiritual word, talks about Zion again and again, about Zion being the focal point. Okay, Christ will return to Zion, according to, I think, Revelation 14. Okay, will return to Zion, and he will become Christ or become king in Zion. And so that is what Zion is. And, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and we remembered Zion, is what they sang during the first exile.
Uh-huh.
And Israel, or Jews, have always been connected to Zion.
Okay.
So when Jews started to say, we need to come back to our biblical homeland, they could have called it Jewish nationalism. They could have called it Israeli nationalism. But because Zion is the focal point of who we are, they called the return or the aspirations of the Jewish people to live in their homeland, they called that Zionism. So basically, Zionism, the definition of Zionism is the self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland.
Okay.
That is what we call Zionism. It's become a bad word, but anybody who reads the Bible, I believe, is a Zionist because you believe that Jesus will return to Zion. Okay. I mean, that's what it says in the Bible.
You believe that Jews have a right to live in this homeland that they belong to. I
believe more than a right. I think that God told the Jews and the world, I will bring my people back and I will plant them back in their land. And in Ezekiel 37, at the end of the parable of the dry bones,
yes,
he actually says, I will bring them and put them in their land. And the reason I'm doing this, God asked themselves a rhetorical question, is because I said I would and I did.
Yes. Okay.
So the return of the Jews to their homeland is not only a right that we have, it is an obligation, I believe, that we have as Jews to fulfill the biblical prophecy that God put again and again, okay, and to become the prerequisite, okay, of Christ returning to Zion. Because when he returns to Zion, he's going to return to the 144,000 okay, Jews who are here that are waiting for his return. So these two things, Zion and the Jews waiting for his return, are part of end time. I'm going to say prophecy, but I'm going to say more than that. That's the end time biblical plan,
Yes.
which means that for end times to happen, the Jews have to be in Zion. So Christians who accept that and believe that and connect to that are called Zionists. And just because they're Christian, they are Christian Zionists. But I mean, do you believe that Italians have a right to live in Italy? That doesn't mean you're a Christian Italian. Do you believe that the French have a right to live in France?
Well,
That doesn't make you a Christian
that's
French.
Zionism, Italianism, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't have any biblical founding or grounding behind it, whereas Zionism does. But that's where I wanted to kind of get that definition for people. So, with that said, I just lost it. Give me a second. Oh, hold on.
Okay, but let's go back to segue to what we were talking about before. That doesn't mean that the modern state of Israel is the biblical kingdom of end times. It means the modern state of Israel is the political and physical manifestation of the Jews returning to Zion, of the Jews fulfilling that prophecy. Now, if you don't believe that the Jews are the chosen people, then that's a different story. So we go back to what we talked about before. If the promise is on the Jews, so if they return, then that is Zionism. Oh, and we're all saying this is another stage bringing us towards end times. But if you don't believe that the Jewish people are in any way, shape, or form God's chosen people, so the disconnect between God, nation, and country has been made. So the Jews are just like Italians in Italy. And that, I think, is what makes this a little bit clear. Now, Tucker says that it's a brain virus. Ambassador Huckabee thinks otherwise. And it was
I think Tucker is a brain virus, but, that's my opinion. So, with that, though, you look at Christian Zionism, if you will. So essentially, what you're saying is that the idea of what Christian Zionism actually is just reading the Bible. Essentially, that's what you would say it is, right?
I'm saying it's fulfillment of prophecy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fair. Okay. So let me see. Obviously, for people that may not know, David and I both work together for an organization called Gihon Springs. Gihon Springs is a Christian organization, a messianic organization, if you will. We are the token Jews there. David, a little bit more token than me. But basically, Gihon Springs is an idea that is to help support the messianic movement in the state of Israel. So obviously, you're a little biased by this. But do you think that organizations like Gihon Springs have a place and are important to what is happening right now? Because, when you're looking at Israel, you see a very well-funded country. You see a country that has so many resources and is doing so many things. Do they need an organization like Gihon Springs to support them in this time?
By reaching out to the Jewish people that have had bad history with Christianity, and again, this is not a place to go through that, but basically there's an antagonism between Christianity and Jews, and an antagonism, by the way, that is even biblical. Paul said that there's been a hardening of the heart of the Jews. But what happens is that when you come to Jews, you can't just open up and say, I want to teach you about Jesus, because there is a hardening of a heart. There is a bad history. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
But just like anything else or any place else, when you want to spread the gospel, you do it through love. You do it with the love of Jesus Christ. And what Gihon Springs does is brings the love of Jesus to the people of Israel. And we're not actually kind of putting it out there and says we want to be missionaries and we want to do this.
Yes.
We want to bring you the love of Jesus. And I have found, and you've seen that, and I've seen it again and again and again, every time that happens in Israel, the next question is, why are you loving us? And that puts me on the step, the path, the route, or the justification of bringing the love of Jesus and fulfilling the Great Commission. And I have seen it happen again and again. You know the stories with widows and with my army buddies. The minute Gihon Springs comes and says, we're doing this because we love Jesus, the next question is, why do people who love Jesus love the Jews? And boom, we've now opened the door to explain who Jesus, the Jewish Jesus, actually was.
I love that.
And I think that's so I believe that's what Gihon Springs is doing first and foremost.
So you would say Christian organizations like Gihon Springs are very important, not just in this time, but in the time to come as well.
Oh, definitely, because don't forget, without the 144,000, it's not going to happen. And again, no, I can't say it's not going to happen. It's prophecy; it's going to happen.
Well, it has to,
but
because God's word is never void. Never returns.
Exactly. So, but wouldn't you like to be a part of ensuring that and bringing that? And I'm going to tell you, there are not 144,000 believers in Israel right now. There's only about 14, 15,000.
So yeah, that's a incredible actual number to know. That's pretty crazy. David, so everyone that is watching here that maybe has come in contact with us or watching, and you're not familiar with Gihon Springs, I encourage you. David encourages you as well. I can speak on his behalf. To check out GihonSprings.com. That's GIHONSPRINGS.com. It will be in the description below as well. If you do feel led to support or want to get to know about our ministry, you can do so by checking out the website, going on Instagram or Facebook, or even seeing where we will be speaking and talking about these things. So we would love to connect with you guys there. You can email us at info@GihonSprings.com, and we'd love to talk with you there if you have any questions. Now, David, obviously you are a YouTuber. You're doing YouTube, you're talking about this stuff on a regular basis. So where can people find you if they're not already following you?
Well, one of the words I haven't mentioned on this one is balagan,
which I'm surprised because you almost always mention it.
Balagan is a Hebrew, Yiddish, Russian, Persian word, by the way, that means mix up. And I have a YouTube channel called The Balagan Connection, BALAGAN Connection, that kind of connects all the different. I mean, we did an amazing Balagan connection just now here. And I find that fascinating. So check out the Balagan Connection on YouTube, on Instagram, and I would love to see you there. There's more and more content coming out as we speak. I'm going to be getting something up this evening about what we talked about in the Middle East. So,
well, not
please,
this evening.
And again,
just so you guys know, it's not this evening because this is going to be what we're recording, and what it's going to be is going to be a different day. But yeah, I definitely encourage every single one of you to go and subscribe to his channel. My content is not focused on these kind of things. If you guys have watched me for any period of time, his content is focused on this. What's going on today? And he's giving you real news from the Israeli perspective as well as an American perspective. So I highly encourage every single one of you to go and subscribe to his channel, hit the alerts to let him know when the new cycle has come out, because he's going to be able to clue you in on current events of what's going on today.
I want to stress something else, though. If you're watching this channel, please like and subscribe, because what Justin is doing here, I think, is critical. One of the things that I'm seeing is a veering away of biblical literacy and spiritual literacy, mostly of young people.
Yeah.
And again, I'm in a different generation, but Justin is bringing this kind of deepness and this kind of literacy to people, I'm going to say under the age of 30. Can I say that, Justin? Okay. I mean,
yeah,
no, not only, but what I'm trying to say is in a way that we're not seeing it in other places. So if you have, and again, I'm talking from my generation, if you have grandkids and kids who you feel are not deeply rooted in what they believe or want to be deeply rooted in what's going on, the Baca Project is putting out content on a regular basis that actually lines up for that. And I just want to say, Justin, thank you.
Thank you, David. That was really nice. I don't even have to plug myself now. That was nice. So thank you guys. If you guys want to support this channel, please go to my Buy Me a Coffee. I love coffee and I really can't get enough of it. So please feel free to do that. I really do appreciate it. David, would you mind praying us out?
Okay. Avinu Shabashamayim, we just want to praise you and praise your name. And we've tried to do this on the airwaves, and we've tried to do this for your glory. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for giving us these screens and these microphones and everything that is going on here. And just help this word to spread out to more and more people. We pray for the people in Israel today and what's going on. The rockets are still falling in Israel, even though there is a ceasefire. We pray for the people of Iran who are coming out of a deep hole that their regime has taken them in. And we pray for people all over the world that they will see the Prince of Peace himself and understand the role that they play in this world. I want to thank you for Justin, that he's able to put this together and just pray that his word and the word of God through him will be spread to the younger generation who is so thirsty to understanding the world in a spiritual way. Thank you for everything that you've done here today. And again, I want to praise your name and praise the name of your son, Yeshua, who made all of this possible.
Amen. David, thank you so much.
Welcome. This was fun, Justin. We got to do this more often.
We got to do it more often. I agree. Well, see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day. I hope this helps a lot. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Take care. Bye.